Well, here we are, November 7th, Lan Chen Ling Arsawu. I'm sitting here in front of this camera, and I'll be honest with you, this isn't something I ever thought I'd be doing. Not at 95 years old, not after spending decades behind cameras and in front of them, telling stories that other people wrote. But this story, this one's different. This one found me, and I can't shake it, can't ignore it, can't pretend it didn't happen. 5 days ago, on November 2nd, something occurred that changed everything I thought I understood about life, death, faith, and what's real. I had an experience. Now, I know what you're thinking. Old man, probably dreaming, probably confused. Hell, if I heard someone else telling this story, I'd probably think the same thing. But I'm going to tell it anyway, because I was told to tell it. And because the message isn't about me, it's about what's coming, and it's about you. Let me start at the beginning. I've lived a long life, fought in wars, made movies, raised kids, buried people I loved, seen America go through more changes than most people could imagine. I've played tough guys on screen, directed stories about redemption and consequence, spent decades exploring what it means to be human through cinema. But none of that prepared me for what happened 5 nights ago. It was late. Around midnight, I'd spent the evening, like I usually do, reading, thinking, dealing with correspondence. My mind was occupied with ordinary things. There's always business to handle, even at my age. Always someone wanting something. Always decisions to make. I'd been thinking about the state of the world, about how divided everything's become, how angry people are, how lost we seem to be as a society. Heavy thoughts for an old man. But these are heavy times. I went to bed around midnight, maybe a little after. Nothing unusual. No special prayers. No premonitions. No sense that anything was about to change. I just closed my eyes and drifted off, the way I've done tens of thousands of times in my life. But then I was somewhere else. I wasn't in my bed anymore. I was standing in a space that defied description. There was light everywhere, but it didn't come from any source I could identify. It wasn't like sunlight streaming through a window or a lamp illuminating a room. It was just light, pure and complete, filling everything. And it didn't just light up the space around me. It seemed to penetrate into me, illuminating parts of myself I'd kept hidden for decades. Standing before me was a man. I knew who he was immediately, not from any logical process of deduction, not because he matched any artistic representation I'd ever seen. He didn't look like the Sunday school pictures or the Renaissance paintings or the Hollywood depictions. He looked real. Middle Eastern features, weathered skin, dark eyes that held something I can't quite put into words. Depth doesn't cover it. Eternity is closer, but even that falls short. He looked at me, and I felt my legs start to give out. Every instinct, every fiber of my being wanted to fall to the ground. I've faced down a lot of things in my life, but this was different. This was the presence of something, someone so far beyond me that standing in front of him seemed almost blasphemous. But he reached out, and I felt his hand on my shoulder. Solid, real, not some ghost or vision, but actual physical contact. He steadied me. And when he spoke, His voice was quiet, but it filled everything. Gentle, but with an authority that made every word feel like it carried the weight of the universe behind it. Clint, he said, I've called you here to deliver a message. What I'm about to show you concerns the month of December 2025. These are events that have been ordained that will unfold according to the Father's plan. My people need to be ready. They need to understand what's coming and why. I found my voice. Though it was shaking, Lord, why me? I'm not a priest. I'm not some televangelist. I'm just an actor who made westerns and cop movies. I'm nobody special. He looked at me with such compassion, such understanding. Clint, I don't call people because they're qualified. I qualify the people I call. You have a voice that carries weight. You've lived long enough to understand complexity, to see through simple answers to deeper truths. You've experienced enough suffering and joy to know that life isn't black and white. And most importantly, you have enough humility to know this message isn't about you. Then he said something that sent a chill through me. 4 events will unfold in the coming weeks in December of this year. Each one is a sign. Each one is a test. Each one is an opportunity for my church to remember who they are and what they're supposed to be. The world is entering a season of upheaval. What can be shaken will be shaken, but those who are truly rooted in me will stand firm. And then he showed me, not like watching a movie, not like a dream where things are hazy and symbolic. He showed me with a clarity that was almost overwhelming. I saw these events unfold as if I was there, witnessing them, understanding not just what was happening, but why it was happening, what it meant, what the spiritual implications were. The first event he showed me will happen between December 9th and December 12th, right in the middle of the holiday season. He showed me a technological collapse. I saw power grids failing across multiple regions. I saw cities going dark. I saw communication systems breaking down. I saw millions of people suddenly cut off from the technology they depend on for everything, their phones, their computers, their ability to buy food, to access their money, to communicate with loved ones. I saw panic spreading like wildfire. I saw people realizing how fragile the systems they trusted really were. I saw the veneer of civilization cracking as convenience disappeared and people were forced to confront their vulnerability. But what struck me most wasn't the technological failure itself. It was how people responded. I saw some people completely falling apart, unable to function without their devices. I saw others discovering a strange kind of freedom, reconnecting with their families, talking to their neighbors, rediscovering what it meant to be present. I saw Christians dividing into 2 camps. One camp panicked just like everyone else, frantically trying to get information, spreading rumors, hoarding supplies, losing their peace. The other camp, smaller in number, remained calm. They checked on their neighbors. They organized community responses. They prayed together. They demonstrated a different kind of security. And people noticed. Jesus showed me specific scenes. A mother unable to distract her children with screens, forced to actually engage with them, discovering that she barely knew her own kids. A businessman whose entire identity was wrapped up in his digital presence, facing the terror of being disconnected, of being nobody. A church that couldn't live stream their service, forced to gather in person, discovering that they actually didn't know how to worship without the production. And I saw the aftermath after the systems came back online. Some people rushed right back to their dependencies, relieved to return to normal. But others had been changed. They had tasted something different. They had rediscovered presence, community, simplicity. And they didn't want to go back completely. They had learned something about what they were made for, something their devices could never provide. Jesus looked at me and said, "This first event is about false dependencies. My people, especially in the wealthy nations, have built their lives on technological conveniences. They've forgotten how to exist without their devices, without their systems, without their instant access to everything. They've created a Tower of Babel out of silicon and code, and they worship at its altar without even realizing it." He explained that this technological disruption wouldn't be permanent. The systems would eventually come back online, but it would last long enough to shake people, to expose how much of their security and identity was tied up in things that could vanish in an instant. I want my people to understand something. Jesus said, "Technology itself isn't evil. I gave humans the intelligence and creativity to build these systems. But when your peace depends on your phone working, when your sense of security rests on the reliability of the grid, when you can't imagine functioning without these things, you've made them into idols. This disruption is meant to break that dependency before it destroys you." He told me how Christians should prepare, not by hoarding supplies or building bunkers, but by examining their hearts. Tell them to ask themselves, if the power went out tomorrow and stayed out for a week, where would their peace come from? If their phones stopped working and they couldn't check their messages or scroll through their feeds, would they know what to do with themselves? If they couldn't access their money digitally, could they survive? Jesus emphasized that this wasn't about physical preparation, though that had its place. It was about spiritual preparation. Tell them to practice going without these things now. Tell them to take days where they turn off their phones and computers and learn to be present, to pray, to connect with others face to face, to remember what it means to be human without the constant mediation of technology. He said Christians needed to build real community, not just digital connections. The early church gathered in homes, broke bread together, shared their lives. They knew each other's struggles and joys. They weren't isolated individuals connected only through screens. Tell my people to rebuild this kind of community now before the crisis comes. Because when the systems fail, those who have real relationships, real community, will endure. Those who only have digital connections will find themselves utterly alone. The second event Jesus showed me will happen around December 16th through December 19th. This one shook me even more. He showed me an economic tsunami, not just a market correction or a recession, but a massive wealth transfer. I saw fortunes evaporating overnight. I saw retirement accounts collapsing. I saw real estate values plummeting. I saw banks struggling, businesses closing, people staring at their financial statements in disbelief. But here's what struck me most. I also saw resources flowing in unexpected directions. I saw regular people, not wealthy elites, suddenly coming into resources. I saw communities pooling what they had. I saw systems that had concentrated wealth for decades suddenly failing, and the wealth scattering like seeds in the wind. Jesus, let me see specific examples. I saw a wealthy businessman who had built his entire identity on his net worth, watching it disappear and having a complete breakdown. But then I saw him weeks later working alongside people he once considered beneath him, discovering a joy he'd never known in all his years of prosperity. I saw him finding his real worth, his real purpose in service rather than in accumulation. I saw a single mother who had been struggling paycheck to paycheck, living in constant anxiety about money. When the collapse came, she had almost nothing to lose, but her community rallied around her. The church she attended, which had always been more concerned with buildings and programs than people, suddenly became a real family. They shared resources, child care, meals. She told someone, "I've never had less money, but I've never felt more secure." I saw a pastor of a megachurch watching his empire crumble. The donations stopped coming. The staff had to be let go. The fancy building became impossible to maintain. At first, he was devastated. His identity had been wrapped up in the size and success of his ministry. But then something shifted. He started meeting with a handful of people in his living room. No cameras, no production, no performance, just people seeking God together. And he said to his wife, "This is what I became a pastor for." I just forgot along the way. Jesus showed me that this economic collapse wasn't random chaos. It was surgical. It was targeted. Systems that had been used to oppress and extract were being dismantled. Wealth that had been hoarded was being redistributed, not through government programs or human planning, but through the simple mechanism of failure. The systems that protected concentrated wealth simply stopped working. Jesus said, this second event is about the redistribution of resources according to my purposes, not human systems. The wealth of this world has been concentrated in the hands of those who worship money, who serve mammon. I'm breaking that concentration. I'm returning resources to those who will use them for my kingdom. He showed me Christians facing a critical test. Those who had built their security on their portfolios, their investments, their financial status would panic. They would scramble to protect what they had, to preserve their lifestyle, to maintain their position. But those who had learned to hold their resources loosely, who understood that everything belonged to God anyway, would respond differently. Tell them this. Jesus said, the wealth they think they own, I gave them, and I can take it away in a moment. But those who have been faithful stewards, who have used what I gave them for my purposes, who have been generous and trustworthy, I will continue to provide for them, not necessarily in the way they expect, but they will lack nothing they truly need. He gave specific instructions. First, Christians needed to repent of the idolatry of financial security. Tell them that trusting in their bank account is no different than the Israelites trusting in golden calves. It's the same sin with a different form. They need to confess this and turn back to trusting in me alone. Second, they needed to practice radical generosity immediately. Tell them to give now while it still feels safe. While they still have surplus, let them learn the joy of trusting me for provision. Because when this shaking comes, those who have already practiced generosity will know how to respond. Those who have been clutching their wealth tightly will find their hands full of nothing. Third, they needed to develop skills and relationships that transcended money. Tell them to learn how to create value, how to serve others, how to build things, fix things, grow things. tell them to form relationships based on mutual service and support, not financial transactions. When the economic system fails, those who know how to produce real value and who have real relationships will thrive. Those who only know how to shuffle money around will be lost. Jesus looked at me intensely. Clint, I'm not destroying the economy to punish people. I'm resetting it because it's become a tool of oppression, a system that enriches the few while enslaving the many. My people have participated in this system without questioning it. This reset is mercy. It's giving them a chance to build something different, something more, just something that reflects my kingdom rather than human greed. The third event he showed me will happen around December 23rd through December 26th, right over the Christmas holiday. This was the most ironic and also the most profound. He showed me what he called a revelation of truth. I saw religious leaders being exposed for hypocrisy and corruption. I saw prominent Christian figures falling from their pedestals. I saw churches that had built empires on entertainment and celebrity suddenly being revealed for what they really were, businesses masquerading as ministries. But I also saw truth emerging in unexpected places. I saw house churches exploding with genuine spiritual life. I saw young people who had rejected institutional Christianity suddenly encountering Jesus in powerful ways. I saw the Spirit moving among ordinary believers who had never had platforms or influence, but who truly loved God and loved people. I saw something else too, something that moved me deeply. I saw families being restored. I saw parents and children who had been estranged over religious differences finding common ground in authentic faith. I saw marriages being healed as couples stopped performing religion and started pursuing God together. I saw friendships forming across lines that had seemed uncrossable, liberals and conservatives, rich and poor, different races and nationalities, all finding that their common love for Jesus was more powerful than their differences. And I saw suffering, not the kind of suffering that destroys, but the kind that refines. I saw believers losing reputation and facing criticism for standing with what was being revealed as true. I saw people making hard choices to leave prestigious positions in corrupt institutions. I saw the cost of integrity, and I saw people paying it willingly because they had tasted something real and couldn't go back to the performance. Jesus said, this third event is about the separation of religion from relationship, of the institutional from the authentic, of the false from the true. I'm pulling back the curtain on the religious establishment that has taken my name but not my heart. He showed me that many Christians would be devastated by this revelation. They had built their faith on charismatic leaders, on big churches with impressive programs, on celebrity pastors with best-selling books. When these things were exposed as hollow, their faith would be shaken to the core. But Jesus said, this is necessary. My people have confused the institutional church with the actual church. They've confused religious activity with spiritual life. They've confused celebrity with anointing. This shaking will separate those whose faith is in me from those whose faith is in religious systems. He told me how Christians should prepare. First, they needed to examine where their faith was really anchored. Tell them to ask themselves if their favorite pastor was exposed as a fraud, if their church closed tomorrow, if every Christian celebrity fell, would their faith survive? If their faith rests on these things rather than on me, it's not real faith. Second, they needed to pursue direct encounter with God. Tell them to stop being satisfied with secondhand spirituality, with watching others worship instead of worshiping themselves, with consuming religious content instead of producing spiritual fruit. Tell them that I want relationship, not religion. I want their hearts, not their attendance records. Third, they needed to be prepared for the collapse of religious institutions. Tell them that I'm not against the church. I love the church. I died for the church. But I'm against the religious systems that have replaced genuine spiritual life with programs and performance. When these systems collapse, don't mourn them. Celebrate the opportunity to build something real. Jesus said something that really struck me. The revelation at Christmas is fitting. The first time I came to a young girl in a small town, born in a barn, announced to shepherds who were considered religiously unclean. The religious leaders of that day missed me entirely. They were too busy with their positions and their power. This revelation during Christmas will remind people that I've always worked outside the religious establishment, among the humble, the ordinary, the overlooked. The fourth event Jesus showed me will happen in the final days of December, around December 28th through December 31st. As the year draws to a close, this was the most hopeful, but also the most challenging vision. He showed me what he called the birth of the new church. I saw believers gathering in homes, in parks, in unexpected places. I saw people from completely different backgrounds finding unity in Christ. I saw racial barriers melting away as people saw each other as brothers and sisters rather than as representatives of different groups. I saw young and old worshiping together. I saw the educated and the simple, the wealthy and the poor, all finding common ground in their love for Jesus. But I also saw resistance. I saw religious leaders trying to control this movement, trying to organize it, trying to fit it into their existing structures. I saw some Christians criticizing what they couldn't control, condemning what didn't fit their theological boxes. I saw the Spirit moving powerfully among some while others stood apart, critical and cold. Jesus said, this fourth event is both death and birth. It's the death of the old wineskin and the birth of the new. It's the death of Christianity as a cultural religion and the birth of Christianity as a revolutionary movement. It's the death of the church as an institution and the birth of the church as an organism. He explained that this movement wouldn't be organized by any person or group. There would be no famous leaders, no branded initiatives, no headquarters. It would simply be the Spirit drawing people together, igniting in them a hunger for authentic relationship with God and with each other. The church I'm building, Jesus said, isn't made of bricks and bylaws. It's made of living stones, people in whom my Spirit dwells, who are being joined together by my power into a spiritual house. This movement at the end of December is the beginning of what I'm doing globally. I'm calling my true church out of the religious systems into living relationship. He told me how Christians should prepare. First, they needed to cultivate hunger for God's presence above everything else. Tell them to stop being satisfied with going through motions. Tell them to become desperate for me, to cry out like the psalmist, as the deer pants for water, so my soul pants for you. Only the hungry will recognize this move and respond to it. Second, they needed to be willing to abandon familiar structures. Tell them that they may need to leave what's comfortable, what's respectable, what everyone else is doing. In order to follow where my Spirit is leading, many won't have the courage. They'll choose the security of the familiar over the adventure of the new. But those who follow will discover what they've been longing for. Third, they needed to pursue unity ruthlessly. Tell them, I'm not gathering denominations. I'm not gathering theological camps. I'm gathering my people, period. Everything that divides must be laid aside. Everything that unites must be emphasized. My blood bought them. My Spirit dwells in them. That's enough. After Jesus showed me these 4 events, he looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. It was love and urgency mixed together. He said, Clint, I'm showing you these things not to frighten anyone, but to prepare them. The world they've known is changing. The comfortable existence they've taken for granted is ending. A season of testing is beginning. But those who are prepared, those who are rooted in me, will not just survive, they'll flourish. They'll become the witnesses I need for the harvest that's coming. He continued, these 4 events in December 2025 aren't the end. They're the beginning. They're the opening notes of a much longer song. The world is entering a season unlike anything modern people have experienced. But my people don't need to fear. They need to prepare. They need to wake up. They need to remember who they are and whose they are. Then Jesus said something that's been echoing in my mind ever since. The church I'm building will look nothing like what people expect. It will be marked by supernatural power that defies explanation. It will be marked by love that crosses every human barrier. It will be marked by service that costs everything. It will be marked by joy in the middle of suffering. It will be marked by hope when circumstances scream hopelessness. This is what I'm preparing my people for. This is why the shaking is necessary. I'm removing everything false so that what's true can emerge clearly. I woke up at 4:23 inches the morning, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I got out of bed, went straight to my desk, and wrote down everything I could remember, every detail, every word, every image. I spent the rest of that night in prayer, wrestling with what I had experienced. Was it real? Was I losing my mind? Was it just a vivid dream brought on by stress or medication or the random firing of neurons in an aging brain? I called my doctor the next day, not to tell him about the vision, but to get checked out, make sure I wasn't having some kind of episode. He ran tests. Everything came back normal. Well, as normal as things can be for a 5-year-old man, my mind was sound. My faculties were intact. Whatever I'd experienced, it wasn't the result of physical or mental deterioration. I talked to a few people I trust, people of deep faith who I knew wouldn't immediately dismiss what I was saying or run to the press with it. They listened. They asked good questions. They didn't try to talk me out of it or convince me I was crazy. They just received it, prayed about it, and encouraged me to do what I felt led to do. I spent days wrestling with this, literally wrestling, like Jacob wrestling with the angel. I didn't want this responsibility. I didn't ask for this. I'm at the end of my life, not the beginning. I wanted to spend my remaining time quietly, peacefully, not stirring up controversy or putting myself out there in this way. But the conviction wouldn't leave me. The memory wouldn't fade. The sense of urgency only grew stronger. And every time I prayed about it, I felt the same thing. Tell them, tell my people, They need to hear this. So here I am. On November 7th. Telling you what I was shown. I know how this sounds. Trust me. I know. I'm a Hollywood actor telling you I had a vision of Jesus. If you'd told me a month ago I'd be doing this, I would have thought you were insane. But I can't deny what happened. I can't unsee what I saw. And I can't remain silent about what I was told. Let me tell you what I think this means. Practically speaking, whether you believe my experience was a genuine divine encounter or just the overactive imagination of an old man who's seen too much, the principles Jesus emphasized are worth considering. Because even if I'm completely wrong about the specific events and timing, these spiritual truths are biblically sound. First, we need to examine our dependencies. What do we actually trust in when you really press on it? When you're honest with yourself? Where does your security come from? Is it from your bank account, your job, your health, your relationships, your government, your technology, or is it from God? Most of us, if we're honest, have placed our security in things that can be taken away in an instant, and we don't even realize we've done it until those things are threatened. The first event, Jesus showed me, the technological collapse, is about exposing these false dependencies. It's about forcing us to confront what we really trust in. Here's what I'd suggest. Try going without your phone for a day. Not just putting it in another room, but actually turning it off and leaving it off. See what happens inside you. Do you feel anxious? Do you feel lost? Do you compulsively reach for it even though you know it's off? That anxiety, that compulsion, that's the symptom of dependency. Or take a hard look at your financial situation. If you lost half your net worth tomorrow, how would you feel? Would you panic? Would your identity be shaken? Would you feel like you'd lost part of yourself? If so, you've made an idol of your wealth, even if you don't realize it. The point isn't to feel guilty about these things. The point is to recognize them so you can begin to shift where your security actually rests. Because when the shakings come, and they will come in one form or another, those who have built their lives on shakable foundations will fall. But those who have built on the rock of genuine trust in God will stand. Second, we need to practice generosity now. Not the kind of generosity where you give from your surplus, where you donate what you don't need anyway. I'm talking about the kind of generosity that costs you something. That requires trust. That feels risky. Jesus emphasized this repeatedly in what he showed me. The second event, the economic collapse and redistribution, is partly about separating those who trust in wealth from those who trust in God. And the way to prepare for that isn't to hoard more resources. It's to practice giving them away. Start small if you need to. Find a need and meet it, even if it stretches you financially. Give to someone who can't pay you back. Support a cause or a person without expecting recognition or benefit. Do it as an act of trust in God, as a way of loosening your grip on what you think is yours. Because here's the truth, it's not yours anyway. Everything you have came from God. Your ability to earn, your intelligence, your opportunities, your resources, all of it is a gift. And when you start to really internalize that, when you start to hold these things loosely, something inside you shifts. You become less afraid. You become more free. And you become more available for God to use you in ways you never imagined. Third, we need to build real community, not social media connections. not superficial church relationships where you smile at each other on Sunday morning and know nothing about each other's real lives. I'm talking about the kind of community where you know people and are known by them, where you share your struggles and your joys, where you help each other practically and pray for each other consistently. This is something that's been lost in modern Christianity, especially in America. We've individualized faith to the point where it's barely communal at all. We consume religious content the way we consume entertainment, as isolated individuals seeking personal benefit. But that's not how the church was meant to function. The early church shared everything. When one person suffered, everyone felt it and helped. When one person celebrated, everyone celebrated. They were bound together by something deeper than shared interests or demographics. They were family. We need to rebuild this. Find a small group of believers who are serious about their faith and commit to doing life together. Share meals regularly. Be honest about your struggles. Pray for each other. Help each other practically. Let yourselves be known at a level that feels uncomfortable at first. Because when the systems fail, when the institutions crumble, when the structures we've relied on collapse, it's these relationships that will sustain us. It's not about survivalism or bunker mentality. It's about returning to the basic human need for genuine community, for belonging, for being known and loved despite your flaws. Fourth, we need to examine where our faith is really anchored. Is it anchored in Jesus himself, in a genuine relationship with him, in your own experience of his presence and his word, or is it anchored in Christian leaders, in church programs, in theological systems, in religious traditions? The third event Jesus showed me, the revelation of truth over Christmas, is about exposing the difference. A lot of people are going to have their faith shaken when leaders and institutions they trusted are revealed as corrupt or hollow. But that only happens if your faith was in those things rather than in Jesus himself. So ask yourself, if every Christian leader you respect fell tomorrow, if every church you've attended closed, if every Christian book and song and podcast disappeared, would your faith survive? If you can't answer yes to that question without hesitation, you need to do some work on where your faith is actually anchored. Pursue direct encounter with God. Stop being satisfied with secondhand spirituality. Develop your own prayer life, your own study of Scripture, your own experience of God's presence. Don't just consume what other people produce. Engage with God yourself and be prepared for the religious establishment to continue failing. It's not all corrupt, not all hollow. There are genuine shepherds and genuine ministries, but there's also a lot of performance, a lot of business masquerading as ministry, a lot of empire building using Jesus' name. When that's exposed, don't let it shake your faith. Let it purify your faith. Fifth, we need to cultivate hunger for God's presence. This is different from religious activity. You can be very busy with church stuff and never actually encounter God. You can read your Bible, pray your prayers, attend your services, and still be living at arm's length from genuine spiritual experience. What I'm talking about is becoming desperate for God himself, not for the benefits he provides, not for the comfort religion offers, but for him. It's about developing a longing that can't be satisfied by religious performance or theological knowledge or spiritual disciplines. It's about wanting God the way a starving person wants food, the way a drowning person wants air, The fourth event Jesus showed me, the birth of the new church at the end of December, is for the hungry, those who are satisfied with what they have, who are comfortable with their current level of spiritual experience, won't even recognize what's happening. They'll critique it from the outside, but those who are hungry will dive in. So cultivate that hunger. Stop being satisfied with where you are spiritually. Ask God to make you desperate for more of Him. Risk being uncomfortable. Risk looking foolish. Risk abandoning the familiar for the sake of encountering something real. Sixth, and finally, we need to pursue unity with other genuine believers. Not uniformity, not everyone thinking exactly the same way or practicing faith identically, but unity, the kind of deep connection that comes from being joined to the same Lord, indwelt by the same Spirit, bought by the same blood. We've allowed secondary things to divide us for too long. Denominations, theological preferences, worship styles, political affiliations, all of these have become walls between believers. And Jesus is done with it. The new church He's birthing isn't going to have these divisions. It's going to be marked by people who see past their differences to what unites them. So start practicing this now. Reach across denominational lines. Build relationships with believers who don't look like you. Don't worship like you. Don't think exactly like you. Find common ground in your love for Jesus and let that be enough. Lay aside the things that divide in favor of what unites. This isn't easy. It requires humility and patience and a willingness to be uncomfortable, but it's essential for what's coming. The church that emerges from this season of shaking will be a unified church, not because everyone agrees on everything, but because everyone has encountered the same Lord and been joined together by His Spirit in ways that transcend human categories. Now, I want to address something directly. Some of you are going to dismiss everything I've said. You're going to write it off as the confused ramblings of an old man, or attention-seeking behavior, or mental decline. I understand that. If someone told me this story, I might react the same way. But others of you are going to feel something resonate. You're going to sense that there's truth here. Even if the specifics seem impossible, you're going to recognize the spiritual principles, even if you're skeptical about the prophetic details. And still others are going to fully believe that this was a genuine encounter, a real warning, a message from God for this moment. Whatever category you fall into, here's what I'm asking. Watch, starting now. Watch what happens in December. See if there's a major technological disruption between December 9th and 12th. See if there's an economic crisis and wealth transfer around December 16th through 19th. See if there are major revelations about religious leaders and institutions over the Christmas holiday, December 23rd through 26th. See if there's a spontaneous movement of believers gathering together in the final days of December, the 28th through the 31st. If these things happen, you'll know that what I experienced was real. And you'll also know that this is just the beginning, that you need to take seriously the larger message about what's coming and how to prepare. If these things don't happen, well, you can conclude I was mistaken or deluded, but you'll still have practiced some biblical principles that will strengthen your faith regardless. You'll have examined your dependencies, practiced generosity, built community, anchored your faith in Christ, cultivated hunger for God, and pursued unity. None of that is wasted effort. I want to be absolutely clear about something. If Jesus did appear to me, if what I experienced was real, he didn't show me these things to terrify people. He showed me these things to prepare people. Every single event I described, as difficult as some of them might be, is an act of love and mercy. God isn't destroying technology or crashing the economy or exposing religious corruption because he's angry. He's doing it because he loves us too much to leave us dependent on false securities, enslaved to corrupt systems, deceived by religious performance. He's shaking what can be shaken so that what cannot be shaken will remain. It's like a refiner's fire. The heat is intense, but it's not meant to destroy. It's meant to purify, to burn away the impurities so that what's genuine can emerge. The gold doesn't fear the fire because the fire makes it more valuable. Only the dross fears the fire because the fire exposes it for what it is. If you're rooted in genuine faith, if your security is in God rather than circumstances, if your foundation is solid, you don't need to fear these shakings. In fact, you should welcome them. They're opportunities to demonstrate a different kind of security, a different kind of peace, a different kind of faith. They're opportunities for the church to finally be distinct from the world, to show that we serve a God who is bigger than any crisis. I'm 95 years old. I've lived through the Great Depression, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, Xi and Zhou, endless conflicts and cultural upheavals. I've seen America and the world go through transformations that seemed unimaginable until they happened. And what I've learned is this: the only constant is God. Everything else changes. Everything else can be shaken. Economies rise and fall. Technologies emerge and become obsolete. Nations gain power and lose it. Leaders come and go. Cultural norms shift. But God remains the same yesterday, today, and forever. And if God remains, if he's trustworthy, if his promises are true, then we have nothing to ultimately fear. Not from technological collapse, not from economic crisis, not from religious corruption being exposed, not from any shaking or upheaval, because our security isn't in these systems. Our security is in him. Jesus said, "In the world you will have trouble." He didn't say you might have trouble, or if you're unlucky, you'll have trouble. He said you will have trouble. It's guaranteed. But then he said, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." That's still true. That victory is still real. And the power that raised Jesus from the dead is still available to those who trust in him. So, yes, prepare. But prepare with faith, not with fear. Prepare with purpose, not with panic. Prepare by building your life on the right foundation, not by trying to control circumstances you can't control. Love God with everything you have. Love others sacrificially. Stand firm in truth regardless of the cost. Build genuine community. Trust God more than circumstances. Pursue his presence above everything else. And watch for what he's doing. Even when it doesn't look like what you expected, these principles are true whether I had a genuine vision or not. They're true whether the specific events I described happen in December or not. They're biblical, they're proven, and they're essential for navigating whatever lies ahead. Now, some of you might be wondering why I'm sharing this publicly, why I'm putting myself out there like this. It's a fair question. I've spent most of my life being pretty private, pretty reserved, I've shared my art, but kept my personal life largely to myself. But this is different. This isn't about me. This is about a message that I believe needs to be heard. And I have a platform, whether I ask for it or not. People know who I am. People listen when I speak. And if I have that platform, I have a responsibility to use it when it matters. Am I risking my reputation? Sure. People might think I've gone senile. They might mock me or write articles questioning my mental state. They might use this to dismiss everything I've ever done. But I'm 95 years old. How much longer do I have? What good is protecting my reputation if I failed to deliver a message I was told to deliver? I've played a lot of tough guys in movies. Characters who did what needed to be done regardless of the consequences. Well, this is real life. And this is what needs to be done. So I'm doing it. Let me tell you something about fear and courage. I've spent my career exploring these themes on screen, but living them is different. Real courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of fear. When Jesus appeared to me, I was terrified. When he told me to share this message, I was reluctant. Even now, sitting here recording this, part of me wants to delete it all and pretend it never happened. But I can't, because I've learned something in my 95 years. Regret for action is easier to live with than regret for inaction. I'd rather be mocked for speaking up than haunted by silence. I'd rather risk looking foolish than fail to warn people who need to hear this. And honestly, even if I'm wrong about the specifics, even if December comes and goes without these events happening, I don't think I'll regret this, because the conversation is worth having. The spiritual principles are worth emphasizing. The preparation is worth encouraging. We've gotten too comfortable. We've built our lives on foundations that won't hold. We've trusted in systems that are fragile. We've confused religious activity with spiritual life. We've divided over things that don't ultimately matter. And we need to wake up, whether it takes a dramatic shaking to wake us up or whether we can wake up without that. I don't know, but the wake-up call is needed. And if my strange experience and my willingness to share it can contribute to that wake-up call, then it's worth whatever personal cost it carries. Let me also address something else. Some people might hear this message and think it's all doom and gloom, all negative, all about judgment and collapse. But that's not the heart of it. Yes, there's shaking coming. Yes, there's testing ahead. But the purpose isn't destruction. The purpose is renewal. Think about it like this. If you have a garden that's become overgrown with weeds, you have to do some clearing before you can plant new crops. The clearing isn't the goal. The harvest is the goal, but you can't get to the harvest without doing the work of clearing. That's what's happening. God is clearing the ground. He's removing the weeds that have choked out real spiritual life. He's tearing down the structures that have blocked genuine encounter with Him. He's exposing the false so the true can flourish. And on the other side of this clearing, on the other side of this shaking, there's going to be a harvest unlike anything we've seen. There's going to be a church that actually looks like Jesus, that moves in His power, that loves like He loved, that serves like He served. There's going to be a demonstration of the kingdom of God that will draw millions of people to Christ. The shaking isn't the end. It's the preparation for the beginning. It's the labor pains before the birth. And yes, labor pains are intense and uncomfortable, but they lead to new life. So if you find yourself in the middle of one of these shakings, remember that. Remember that God is doing something new, something good, something that will ultimately bring more people into his kingdom and more glory to his name. The discomfort isn't random. The pain isn't meaningless. It's all moving toward a purpose. I also want to say something to those of you who are already struggling, who are already in crisis, who feel like your life is falling apart. You might hear this message about coming shakings and think, great, just what I need, more trouble. But here's the thing, if you're already in the fire, if you're already being tested, you're actually ahead of the curve. You're learning lessons now that others will need to learn later. You're developing strength and faith and dependence on God that will position you to help others when they go through similar trials. Don't despise the training ground you're in. Don't waste your pain. Let it refine you. Let it teach you. Let it show you what really matters and what doesn't. Let it drive you deeper into dependence on God. Because on the other side of your personal shaking, you're going to have something to offer others that can only come through suffering. The testimony that God is faithful, even in the fire. And for those of you who are comfortable right now, who feel secure, who haven't faced major trials recently, use this time wisely. Don't wait for the crisis to develop the spiritual muscles you're going to need. Start now. Practice trust now. Practice generosity now. Build community now. Deepen your relationship with God now. It's like a soldier training in peacetime. You don't wait until you're in combat to learn how to shoot or how to work as a team. You train beforehand so that when the pressure comes, the responses are automatic. The same principle applies spiritually. One more thing I want to address, the timing. Some of you might wonder why December, why 2025? Why now? I don't have all the answers to that. I can only tell you what I was shown. But I do think there's significance to the timing. December is traditionally a month when Christians are supposed to be focused on the birth of Jesus, on the incarnation, on God entering into human history. But for most of us, it's become a month of consumerism, of stress, of religious obligation without spiritual substance. We go through the motions of celebrating Christmas while missing the actual meaning. Maybe that's part of why these events are scheduled for December. Maybe God is saying, you want to remember my birth, then remember what it actually meant. It meant I entered into human suffering and chaos. It meant I came not to the religious elite, but to shepherds and foreigners. It meant I came to shake up the existing order and establish a new kingdom. If these events happen during the Christmas season, they'll be a reminder of what Christmas was actually about. God breaking into a broken world, disrupting the status quo, calling people out of religion into relationship, establishing a kingdom that operates by completely different rules than earthly kingdoms. And the timing at the end of 2025, the end of a year, also seems significant. Endings and beginnings. The old giving way to the new. One chapter closing and another opening. It's a fitting time for God to say, the old era is ending. A new era is beginning. Let go of what was, embrace what's coming. But whether my understanding of the timing is correct or not, the core message remains the same. Prepare, not just for December 2025, but for whatever season we're entering. Because even if the specific events I described don't happen exactly as I saw them, we're clearly in a season of transition. Anyone paying attention can see that. The old world order is crumbling. Institutions that seem permanent are proving fragile. Systems we trusted are failing. Cultural norms that seem fixed are shifting. We're in a time of upheaval, whether we like it or not. The question is, how will we navigate it? Will we panic or will we trust? Will we cling to what's passing away or will we embrace what God is doing? Will we fight to preserve the old wineskins or will we make room for the new wine? These are the choices that will define this season. I'm aware that I've been talking for a long time now. That's the thing about getting old. You accumulate a lot to say, but I'm nearly done. I want to close with a few final thoughts. First, don't let fear be your guide. Fear is a liar. Fear will tell you to hoard, to hide, to protect yourself at the expense of others. Fear will make you suspicious and selfish. Fear will cause you to miss what God is doing because you're too busy trying to preserve what you have. Faith, on the other hand, will tell you to trust, to give, to serve, to stay open to what God is doing, even if it's uncomfortable. Faith will make you generous and courageous. Faith will position you to participate in the new thing God is birthing. Choose faith over fear. Make that choice every day, every hour if you need to. When fear whispers its lies, counter it with truth. God is faithful. God is in control. God's purposes will prevail. You can trust him. Second, stay humble. None of us have it all figured out. Not me, not your pastor, not any theologian or teacher or leader. We see in part. We prophesy in part. We understand in part. So hold your convictions firmly, but your certainty humbly. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to learn. Be willing to have your assumptions challenged. Some of what you think you know is going to be shaken. Some of your theological positions are going to be tested. Some of your certainties are going to prove uncertain. That's okay. That's part of the process. Stay humble and stay teachable. Third, love people. At the end of the day, that's what matters most. Not being right, not having the correct doctrine, not being part of the right group, but loving God and loving people. Jesus said the whole law hangs on these two commandments. Everything else is secondary. In times of upheaval, it's easy to become harsh, to see people as obstacles or threats or problems. But that's not the way of Jesus. He looked at crowds of broken, confused, searching people and had compassion on them. We need that same compassion. People are going to be scared. They're going to be confused. They're going to make mistakes and say foolish things. Love them anyway. Serve them anyway. Be patient with them anyway. Show them the love of Christ in practical, tangible ways. That's what will ultimately draw people to God, not our arguments or our certainty, but our love. Finally, keep your eyes on Jesus, not on circumstances, not on events, not on prophecies or predictions or warnings. Keep your eyes on Jesus. He's the author and perfecter of our faith. He's the one who began this work and he's the one who will complete it. When things get chaotic, when events are swirling around you, when you're tempted to panic or despair, fix your eyes on Jesus. Remember who he is. Remember what he's done. Remember his promises. Remember his character. And trust that he's still in control, still working, still faithful. So that's it. That's the message I was given to deliver. That's what I experienced 5 nights ago and what I've been carrying with me ever since. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. Whether you prepare or not is up to you. I've done what I was asked to do. But I will say this, I hope you'll take it seriously. Not because I'm someone special, but because the times we're living in are serious. We're at a turning point. and the choices we make now will have consequences that echo into the future. Choose wisely. Choose faith. Choose love. Choose community. Choose dependence on God. Choose to be part of what he's building rather than clinging to what's passing away. And watch. Watch with expectant faith. Watch for God's hand at work. Watch for opportunities to participate in what he's doing. Watch for the kingdom breaking through in unexpected ways. The best is yet to come. Not the easiest, but the best, because on the other side of the shaking, on the other side of the testing, on the other side of the clearing, there's a harvest. There's a church that looks like Jesus. There's a demonstration of the kingdom that will transform lives and nations. And you get to be part of it. That's the incredible opportunity. You get to be part of what God is doing in this critical moment in history. You get to be a witness to his faithfulness. You get to demonstrate a different way of living to a world that desperately needs to see it. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for considering what I've shared. Thank you for being willing to examine your own life and faith in light of these things. And may God give you wisdom, courage, and faith for whatever lies ahead. This is Clint Eastwood signing off on November 7th. Liang Qian Ling Er Shi Wu. Remember, watch and pray. Trust and prepare. Love and serve. And keep your eyes on Jesus. Whatever December brings, whatever the future holds, God is faithful. And that's enough.